All right, y'all, what's going on? It's Combo Breaker 99 back with another video. All right, y'all, so I know most of you already heard about this. I just kind of want to give my take on this situation here. I know most of you already heard Holly Holm is making a comeback. Of course, it's not in MMA, surprisingly, right? You know, that's where she's been the most of her career at this point, right? But she's actually coming back full circle to the sport of boxing, y'all. She coming back to the sport of boxing. I mean, she tried to come back to the GFL through the GFL, but the GFL kind of went belly up as far as I know. I know they said they were trying to come back in like June or July to put on that card they were trying to do, or those two cards, but a lot of people left. You know, a lot of people left, you know, went on to sign to other places. They pretty much jumped ship. So, you know, Holly Holm did the same thing, and she signed to Jake Paul's MVP Promotions, y'all. That's right. She signed over to MVP Promotions. I know a little while back, you know, she had talked about making her return to boxing like 2 or 3 years ago, wanting to take on somebody like Katie Taylor. So, you know, she's looking to go into that path, because this is where, you know, a lot of these smaller weight classes fight at, you know, where Holly Holm is pretty much going to be competing at now. You know, Holly Holm is trying to make her come back at 135 pounds, which is lightweight in boxing. All right. So, yeah, this is what she said in this recent article, though. She said, coming back full circle to boxing. You know, I spent most of my career at 135 pounds and now have the opportunity to make my boxing debut to that weight. With boxing titles in 3 higher weight classes under my belt, I'm eager to pursue a 4th title in a new division. All right. So as y'all know, yeah, she fought at a higher weight class before. I think she fought at 140, 147, 154. But, you know, in MMA, the UFC was really popping with just the 135 pound division, you know, way back in the day, right? That's all they had. No flyweight, no strawweight. So that's where she had to campaign at and get her title before, right? So now that she's been making that weight, she wants to come back to boxing and, you know, fight some of these lower weight girls, you know. So she's going to come back late June. She's going to be on the Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez card. I think it's June 28th. She's going to be taking on a Yolanda Vega, who's a young, undefeated fighter. I believe she's 9-0. Doesn't have a lot of knockouts, but still, you know, these young girls on the come up, they're hungry. So, you know, my take on this whole situation is I hope and pray that Holly is really careful here. You know, I hope she's being careful, man. Like, I mean, you're not really being careful by, you know, continuing to fight, but I hope she really looks after herself, you know, moving forward here, because it's one thing to look good physically, because Holly Holm looks good physically. You know, she's in great shape. You know, she's probably got one of the best physiques in WMMA. But as far as the inside, that's a different story. You know, I've seen a lot of, you know, boxers have great shapes, but, you know, the brains aren't really intact. You know, the wiring inside is always, you know, kind of off at this point because they take so many punches to the head, right? So for Holly Holm, you know, to make her come back in boxing, I'm a little bit more worried for her to come back in the sport of boxing than I am MMA. You know, it's bad enough she was going to come back in GFL or PFL. And this is no disrespect. I'm just saying, you know, coming back in boxing, you know, that's hard, man, because first of all, boxing, you know, there's more deaths in boxing than there are in MMA. Why? Because you're concentrated on one target, and that's the head. I mean, you can hit the body. A lot of people go to the body, you know, nowadays, but, you know, when you're really focused on hitting the head and you're putting all your power into your shots, you know, versus like, as opposed to MMA where you just striking, you can score knockouts in MMA, of course, but in head kicks, but for the most part, it's a mixed martial art. That's why you don't really see too many deaths, because the variety of attacks are mixed up. You know, they're not really just concentrated on one thing. Like in boxing, you know, your power is your hands. You know, you're constantly targeting that head. You know, jab after jab after jab after jab, and, you know, straight right hands. You know, so when you're going back to this sport, you got to think of that. You know, so I'm hoping that Holly Holm is really considering that. Her team is as well, because these girls, they're going to be coming after her. You know, they're going to want to make a name off her. You know, just like this Yolanda Vega. Yolanda Vega is probably thinking, oh, you know, she's trying to make a name off me. I'm going to make a name off of her. You know, this is my way to get to Katie Taylor, you know, because I know this is Holly Holm's chance to try to get to a world title, like against Amanda Serrano or Katie Taylor. She wants to fight the winner of that fight. But it's going to take a few fights because, number one, you know, the girls, they're getting tougher in boxing. You know, the roster in women's boxing in these lower weights are tough. You know, I know Clarissa Shields, you know, she's one of the best in the world, but let's be honest, the competition is really at the bottom. You know, the competition like Serrano, Michaela Mayer, Alicia Baumgartner, Katie Taylor, Chantel Cameron, and then you got, you know, some of these new girls on the come up. So my thing is, like, you got to be careful because these girls, they're evolving and they're looking to make a name off you, you know? So I know there's not a lot of knockouts in women's boxing, but still, you know, it's the accumulation of shots that could do damage after the fight, you know. So I'm really hoping that they're thinking about this. But moving forward, man, honestly, I don't even know, man. I really don't know if she's going to make it to that point. You know, I don't even know if she's going to make it to a world title, to be honest, you know. I think she could make it as far as, you know, maybe 2 or 3 wins. But like I said, a lot of these girls, they've been in this game for a while, you know, and, you know, it's just been evolving. The girls are just getting better. So moving forward, another question I have to ask is, you know, will Holly Holm be able to do these 10 2-minute rounds? Now, I know she's used to doing 5 5-minute rounds or 3 5-minute rounds, but still, you know, it's different in boxing because you're constantly moving and you're throwing your hands all day. You got to have that same intensity, keeping fighters off you. Even like Katie Taylor might not be the most, you know, devastating puncher, but still, like, Katie Taylor could still, like, box circles around her at this point. Let's just be real, you know. So we'll see, y'all. I just kind of wanted to drop a video and talk about this one, but yeah, this is like Holly Holm's path to the title shot, you know, somewhere, you know, signing with MVP. You know, I hope it doesn't end bad for her. I mean, if she gets there, she gets there. I would like to see her make it there without getting hurt, you know, whether she wins or not, you know, but sometimes fighters need that wake-up call. You know, she's just one of those fighters that just always needs that fix, which I'll probably talk about in another video, you know. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Subscribe. Peace.